Hello and welcome to our live coverage of the SAP 5O5 World Championships, live from Port Elizabeth. This is Alec Wilkinson. We're looking out across the Algoa Bay as they prepare for the final race on this final day of the World Championships. Now, yesterday, the defending champion sealed the title for a second time in 2 years. Mike Holt and his crew, Carl Smith, crowned champions again yesterday. But there are plenty of battles to keep an eye on for today's race. The battle for second, the battle amongst the women, the battle for the classic boats. So plenty for us to look forward to. And racing should get underway in just a few minutes' time. And what a superlative effort from Mike Holt and Carl Smith yesterday.
Yeah, they probably can't believe it. They were out celebrating last night, but they couldn't find anyone else to really join in with them.
I think we've got a microphone problem. Start again so we can all hear you.
Yeah, so Mike and Carl were out celebrating last night, but they couldn't find anyone to join in with them because everyone else has still got to go racing. They've been restricting the beer intake all week, their maximum 2 beers a night. But someone that Mike was just reminding me, I was just on the phone to Mike, who is out there with Carl Smith, and maybe we'll talk to them during the racing because they're watching the racing on the water. They'll
join us for the live commentary when racing gets underway shortly.
Ian Pennell, he had a few drinks last night, and Mike thinks that maybe Ian Pennell's speed problem the day before was that he hadn't consumed enough on the night before that. So he's one of those rarities that actually seems to go faster the more he consumes, which is maybe not the message that we like to put out these days, but I'm just stating the fact of how some athletes operate.
Okay. Well, on the water, let's see how they operated. This is how Mike Holt and his crew sealed the deal yesterday. Day 5 of the SAP 5O5 Worlds saw the champion successfully defend his crown. The winds off Port Elizabeth grew steadily through the day, and leaders Mike Holt and Carl Smith initially struggled to get clear of the pack, but by the first mark they were leading. Fellow Californians Ted Conrads and Brian Haynes were also going well and briefly stole the lead from Holt and Smith, but the heavier crew eventually came through to take the win. Great Britain's Ian Pennell was third, although his chances of winning the Worlds were slipping away. The ability to track wind speed and direction is critical to running SAP sailing analytics at the SAP 5O5 World Championships in South Africa. With weather buoys streaming real-time wind data back to the shore, it's possible to see which side of the racecourse is paying and why. Going into race 7, Pennell would need to win the race with Holt outside the top 4 to have any chance of taking the title. But suddenly the focus was on the disaster unfolding on the start line. The mast was broken, but everyone was okay. Doubly sad though because the damaged boat was also the oldest in the fleet. After the restart, Stefan Bohm and Gerald Roos made the early running to lead around the first mark. But the Germans couldn't keep the fast Californians at bay, as Holt and Smith and Conrads and Haynes surfed past by the bottom gate. With Pennell back in 5th place, Holt sailed away to claim his 5th race victory of the championships and his 2nd world title in as many years.
Fabulous. We were super psyched. It was a fun day and it was good. We were counting them up, so 5 out of 7 isn't a bad way to go.
Yeah, that was fun today. You know, it was always going to be tough sailing and we didn't really know what to expect, so get it done today was good. Feel good about that.
A night of celebration then for the champions, but the battle for 2nd and 3rd will continue into the final race on the final day. 2 minutes to today's race. Let's get the conditions out on the course right now. Marcus Bauer, as always, in the analytics corner.
Currently we have 10 knots out there. That's roughly what the forecast said. Similar direction as yesterday. It's supposed to clear up a little bit and the wind's supposed to pick up a bit more, maybe up to 12 to 14 knots. A little less than yesterday, but still very good sailing conditions for this last and final race.
And that is the scene out near the start line with 1 minute and 20 seconds or so to go. Are we in a position to have a look at the course just before the Pathfinder opens up that start line? Here we go.
Yes, we can. And we're going to start and go upwind to the first mark, as we always do. Then off to an offset mark, then down to the gate, back up to the windward mark. Again, there's a little offset mark that the boats have to go to, then off to a reaching mark. Back to the leeward gate, back upwind, and onto the final leg, offset mark again, and then onto the final leg, through the gate, down to the finish. That's the course of today.
I think we need to watch out for whether there's a final windward leg, because that sometimes has been the option on single race days. So let's keep an eye on that.
Well, that's what we get out of the system, and yep, let's keep an eye out on it. But I expect a downwind finish at the moment.
Really? Now the battle is really for the final two podium places, as GBR 9136, the Pathfinder today, opens up the start line. And that is Ian Pennell and Johannes Tellen. And they surely are the favourites for that second place, because that's where they are overall after their fifth place finish yesterday. They are 2 points ahead of the Americans Ted Conrads and Brian Haynes. And really, those two boats have to be the favourites for second and third place, the remaining podium places. Marcus.
So we see the boat starting behind that rubber dinghy there, and Ian Pennell and Johannes Tellen sailing in front of it, and the majority of the fleet starting late again. Yes, Andy?
I think there's a few boats in trouble here as well. They're far too high, and some of these boats are going to struggle to start. They're way high on the Pathfinder. You can hardly see where the Pathfinder is, and I just wonder if they're going to have to start this again, or maybe some of those boats are just going to get disqualified. But I think some of them are struggling to get back over, and there's a boat just to the left of the Pathfinder that must be giving the Pathfinder bad air, I would think.
Yeah, we see it here in a bit more detail. Actually, bad news for Ian Pennell, who might get some dirty air from the boats. But I think now most of the boats managed to go behind.
That was a bit of a messy lineup by the fleet, I thought. They were far too high. So maybe Pennell is on a lower track than they'd anticipated. Maybe the breeze has shifted right a little bit.
But I can look at the tracking right now, and it looks clean. All the boats have actually gone behind. Bit of a messy start, I must say, though.
Yesterday we saw what could happen when it goes wrong, and one of the boats crashed into that rubber dinghy that's protecting the Pathfinder, and that boat, which is a South African boat sailed by Grant Ballantyne, is not taking part today because it was dismasted, and there were problems with the hull as well. There was a bit of delamination there. Now, what are the effects on Pennell and Tellen of being the Pathfinder today? How's this going to affect their challenge for second place?
Yeah, it's a really strange situation. There is always the sacrificial lamb who is the Pathfinder. There may not be the sacrificial lamb. It may be that it's a gift from God to go out to the right-hand side, but they have no choice about it. They have to sail for 2 minutes in that direction, and they will be hoping that the right-hand side is paying. But if it isn't, then really they've been handed a terrible card by going out to the right-hand side, and early indications would suggest that it's not working very well for them at all out there.
So will it or won't it be a good Friday for Ian Pennell and Johannes Tellen? At the moment, it's looking good for Conrads and Haynes, who are also moving towards that right-hand side of the course. So they're the two boats we're keeping an eye on in the battle for the podium places. But right now, the Australians, Quirk and Payne, are sitting at the front of the fleet. Although this data coming in thick and fast always at the start of racing, and it takes a little while for things to settle down for the boats to plot their course and for the data to be properly analysed. Marcus.
Interesting battle between the girls, Tina Plattner and Nikki Birkner and Stenger. Sorry for the mix-up. The names are the wrong way around there.
So yeah, look at the angle of Higgins and Marsh on the left-hand side, really high heading. Now look at the heading of Conrads and Haynes and Pennell and Tellen on the right-hand side, and it looks to me like the two leading lights for second place, the second and third place boats overall at the moment, are really struggling on the right-hand side, and it looks like the Americans, Conrads and Haynes, had a pretty bad start and were forced to tack away probably earlier than they wanted to. So I spoke to Luke Payne, who's in fourth overall at the moment, and he's on 25 points going into today, and he was still gunning for second place overall, which would be an 8-point jump that he's got to make on Ian Pennell. I looked at him as if to say, well, you're never going to do that, mate. But actually looking at the way things are going, the two boats in front of them overall today, Conrads and Haynes and Pinnell and Tellen, not going terribly well in these early stages, but maybe things are just starting to come back in their favour. What do you reckon, Marcus?
Well, actually, looking at the tracking, Pinnell obviously had a decent start, and if we take the advantage line with a pinch of salt, he could be in the lead, actually, and Conrads and Haynes are not that far behind, so the battle is on for that second place. I reckon it's a little bit too early to call, but yep, the advantage line is shifting currently, and we see Pinnell and Tellen on the right-hand side of the course.
And we're also looking at the German and the South African flags there. And the reason that those two boats are particularly significant today is that Tina Plattner on the South African boat is currently the best placed female skipper in the fleet. She's sitting 15th going into today's race. One place behind her is the German boat. Nicola Berkner is the skipper of that. She's sailing with Angela Stenger, and they're in 16th place. So that battle will be one worth watching and should be fun.
Well, the weight advantage would certainly be with Tina Plattner, because she's got David Shelton crewing for her, who weighs considerably more than the crew on the all-female boat, Angela Stenger.
But with 8.4 knots currently, are they fully powered yet?
8.4 knots of
Wind.
It looks to me like there's more than that on these pictures. I mean, that to me looks more like 12, 13 knots.
It's not the data we're currently getting. Maybe in between 10 knots. But you're right, it does look more than 8 knots. Boats are already heeling, not quite upright.
And they're close to planing upwind,
Yep.
I would have thought.
Yeah, very true. It's 10 knots now, 10.5 knots in our wind data, so, and that is down at the start, so it is increasing. The breeze is picking up.
Bronwyn Klaas and Aaron Tellen of South Africa on the left of the screen, being followed by the Australian Sam Cronin and Kevin Whitbread, Port Kembla Sailing Club in Australia. But Ian Pinnell at the moment is registering as the leader on our leaderboard, and that is exactly where he wants to be, to seal second place, silver medal in this World Championship.
So right-hand side not so bad after all, and maybe he has been given a nice gift by being made Pathfinder today. Bowman Roos up there as well. We saw them lead around the windward mark yesterday, but are they able to hold on to that kind of position? It seems like they struggle for pace downwind compared with some of the leading boats. And Howie Hamlin and Jeff Nelson also in the top three right now. What a nice consolation prize it would be for them if they were able to win the final race of the Worlds, because the former world champions have had a torrid time this week trying to put their brand new boat together and nearly breaking their mast in the pre-Worlds because of rigging problems, and it's been a really, really hard week for those Americans. So a lot of people will be wishing them well and hoping that maybe they could pull off a race win today as they move into the lead.
But you know, they've been in the top 10 for the majority of the races, and I suppose it's just a sign of our expectations of them that we would think that they should do better than that, and that they would be disappointed with those results.
Oh, but they are too. I mean, if you speak to them, they're disappointed if they're not in the running for winning the Worlds. I asked maybe a slightly impertinent question to Howie the other day, who's now 62 years old, and I asked him, is there anything that you could do 15 years ago that you can't do now? And he stopped and thought about it, and he said, no, I don't think so. I think I can sail this boat, and I can sail the 18-foot skiff now as well as I could any time in the last 10 or 15 years. So he doesn't think he's slowing down. So
All in
he
good
still
shape.
wants to be leading these races.
All in good shape, top
Yeah.
to bottom.
Very much.
Very good. So let's look at the race course, slightly skewed to the left. The leaders at the moment in the middle of the course, I think Ian Pinnell on the right-hand side of the course has run out of options a little bit. He's close to the ley line. All you can do is hit the paddle and go up there. But the wind is very steady. Again, similar to yesterday, considering it's an offshore breeze. It's just oscillating very slightly between 230 and 240 degrees. But according to our advantage line, it's the middle that is cooking at the moment.
It's interesting to see Larger and Hutton Squire of South Africa moving up to second place. They've got progressively better as this competition's gone on through the week, and they were there or thereabouts for many of the races.
And they could be knocking on the door of the top 10 if they keep
Well, yes,
this up.
I was just trying to do the maths, because at the moment the Peter and Thomas Funke, the South African brothers, are the best placed South Africans at the moment, 10th overall. But there's only 2 places between them and this boat that's currently in second place.
So, Marcus, where are the leading lights at the moment in terms of their spread across the course?
I'd say the middle is winning at the moment, or the left-hand side. Also interesting to look when we get the 3D graphics on. Interesting to look at where the girls are heading. We saw Tina Plattner heading out to the right-hand side, Nikki Bergner to the left, and they're converging now towards the right-hand side of the course. Looks like, hard to tell. They're pretty much on par, but that would be good enough for Tina Plattner to secure the trophy for best female team or best female skipper. And Hamlin and Nelson looking really good on the left-hand side. Wind is picking up slightly. We're actually up to 14 knots now. So what we just saw on those images, I think, was right. You were very much right, Andy. It has increased, and our measurements are taken down at the start line. So it probably took a while for the breeze to get down there, but it's quite windy now.
Now there's also an interesting battle amongst the Australian boats. Michael Quirk and Luke Payne are currently 4th overall, but there's only a point or place between themselves and Sandy Higgins and Paul Marsh. And not far off is Malcolm Higgins and Nick Johnson as well. So 3 Australian boats all doing battle for 4th and 5th and 6th place, and really they're sailing for pride within the Australian fleet now.
Tina Plattner managed to pass in front of Nikki Bergner. I just saw that, and it still looks like Hamlin and Nelson are doing well, heading in from the left-hand side of the course. That's in our mini graphic, that little number 1 down at the bottom. They still have plenty of options. They're almost in the middle of the course, currently moving towards the right-hand ley line.
Those huge cargo ships that come in and out of Port Elizabeth, forming the background yet again for the fleet. Very much the industrial centre of the Eastern Cape is Port Elizabeth. And it's quite a big export market in cars. Volkswagen have a big plant here. I think General Motors do as well. And when you drive down past the harbour, you see all those hundreds of cars waiting for the containers and the shipping companies to take them off around the world.
Nice view over the whole fleet.
And shipping and containers have caused Howie Hamlin quite a problem. The reason he has struggled this week is because his regular boat never made it from the States to South Africa because of an industrial dispute in America. But he seems to have finally managed to set up the boat he does have to his liking.
Yeah, good average speed on him so far. 6.3 knots. Only the South Africans going a little bit quicker than them, but not quite as high. And we've got Conrads and Haynes, of course, the speedsters of the week, doing almost 7 knots at the moment in 3rd place. Sorry, that is 3rd place overall, 7th place in this race.
Larger and Hutton Squire, this is a great learning process for them and for all the South Africans. To be able to get the international fleet down to their part of the world and to be able to learn from them is a great opportunity for the South Africans. As we see the leaders go around, Howie Hamlin and Jeff Nelson, I think that's the first time they've led around a windward mark so far this week.
And there are the South Africans going in 2nd place. And then at least 3 of those boats that we can see at the mark are now Australian. At the moment, it's Higgins and Marsh who are leading them, but Quirk and Payne have been so strong generally through the week, are in the top 5 as well. Yesterday's second placed boat in both races, Conrads and Haynes, also in the mix right now. So out with the spinnakers, downwind they go.
Just hold there for a moment, Mike.
As the fleet makes its way round the first windward mark.
Just while we're chatting, could you see much? Have you got much to say?
Okay, so as Hamlin and Nelson lead the fleet away, let's hear from Mike Holt, who's out on the water, and get his thoughts on how the race is unfolding. He's talking to Andy.
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clear. Yep.
Okay, Mike. It'd be great to get your input on what happened on that first leg. Give us your insights from out there on the water.
Yeah. Pavin. The action, but I think Howie Hamlin came round first with Jeff Nelson with a nice lead, basically going centre and left, and then the race for second place is really quite interesting at the moment. Brian and Ted and Ian Pennell came round just behind Quirky, so and they've now all split jibe, so we've got kind of a spread, so we're going to have to see how it all regroups at the bottom mark again. But nice sailing out here, great breeze, and it looks really good.
And the South Africans, Larger and Hunt and Squire, they went round in second place. They did an early jibe out. How do you think they're doing away from the rest of the fleet?
Yeah, they were looking very good. They came in, they jibed set. I'm not. It looks like they've jibed back again now. It's hard to. Yeah, they have. So I'm not sure if they're over manoeuvring, but the leaders have now just jibed. Howie's now just jibed as well. So we'll see how they come back together.
Now, it's not like you to miss a day's racing. Tell us, when was the last time you actually managed to sit out a day at the 505 Worlds?
I think we've lost him, which is a shame, because I was dying to hear why he chose to sit out this race.
We can't hear you on.
We'll try and get him back in a minute, but we'll go backwards and forwards to the water and get the very latest from Mike as the fleet continues to head downwind. And what's Marcus spotted?
Very interesting split with the South Africans going onto the right-hand side of the course and apparently making a gain over there. They're converging back now. We can see in our live image that they're crossing over to the other side. In the 3D graphics, they're looking good, but their advantage is closing in, and Higgins and Marsh are moving ahead on the left-hand side of the course, overtaking them now. It did look good half a minute ago, but it's probably too early to call. If we go into have a look at our mini map, the boats are, the course is still skewed to the left, and the boats are already exiting that playground. They're hitting the left-hand ley line.
Really good race for Larger, Hutton and Squire.
Lying 12th overall. That'd be a nice end to this regatta for them if they can manage to stay in the top 3 in this race. And
they're actually about 14 points behind 11th place, so it's unlikely, unless Terry Scutcher, who's ahead of them, has a terrible race, and he's not. He's in 5th at the moment. So unless something dramatic happens, it's unlikely that those South Africans will be able to move up the leaderboard. But nonetheless, it's always good to go out with a bang, and they're certainly doing that, and they're giving the home fans something to cheer about as they watch on the large screen.
And the Funke brothers, they've been the best of the South Africans for most of the week, but they're outside the top 10 in this race. They really need to get into the top 10 in this race if they're going to stand a chance of finishing in the top 10 overall. And the South Africans as a group really wanted to get at least one boat into the top 10 here. either way, I hope they're learning an awful lot by surrounding themselves with some of the best in the world, and hopefully they can start applying those lessons to their 505 sailing going forwards from here down in South Africa.
The blue spinnaker belongs to the second placed boat, the Australians Higgins and Marsh, registering almost 11 knots as they head downwind.
Closely followed by the South Africans, currently not in the picture. Should come into picture on the left hand side. We can see them on the 3D graphics. Currently still in third position. Nice cross now with the boats coming from the right hand side of the course. Skutcher and Dibic, there they are. Quirk and Payne in the background.
Do we know where's Ian Pennell? We'll just check that on the data as that comes in. I think he's around about 6th at the moment, but we'll get confirmation of that as soon as Marcus gets it.
Sorry, say again.
So here we are with this magnificent aerial shot of the front of the fleet.
And looks like Skutcher and Dibic have had a fantastic run. I don't think they were that high up going around the windward mark. I think whatever they've done down this run has been one of the most effective routes.
They certainly weren't in the top 5 going around that windward mark.
Skutcher and Dibic now closing into the gate. I think on the very much favoured side of the gate. If they take that, I'm almost certain they'll take the lead.
Now, yesterday we saw Mike Holt zooming down the downwind legs, and he has done that for most of the week. Obviously, he's sitting out. Ian Pennell, though, who needs to get a good result here to confirm his second place. Ian Pennell was struggling on the downwind legs. Now, apart from the tongue-in-cheek explanation that he hadn't drunk enough beer, did we get to the bottom of why he was so much slower?
No, that was the honest to goodness answer that I got from Mike Holt when I asked him. It was a lack of lubrication, and it wasn't anything to do with the boat. It was the amber nectar down his neck that was lacking. And it's a semi-serious point. I mean, there are still some sailors that manage to sail very well.
In England, that is.
Yeah, Ian Barker, as you know, won an Olympic silver medal that you would love to have had. I mean, he was there.
Thank you for reminding me.
Where did you finish in those Olympics?
5th.
5th. No, very good.
It was the Olympics you didn't even qualify to.
Yeah, that's very true, because I didn't drink enough, because Ian Barker, he pushed the boat out on the night before.
And that is practice. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
It's all about practice.
So what happened?
Well, Ian
What's
Barker.
your excuse?
My excuse was not doing what Ian Barker did, which was much against his coach's wishes. Had quite a few drinks the night before the concluding race of the Olympics to decide the colour of the medal that he was going to win. And Ian Barker has this theory that if you wake up with a hangover, you've only got enough mental focus left to focus on the racing. You haven't got time to get nervous, because you can't think about getting nervous. So it's a very strange theory, and I know some of us struggle to get our heads around it.
I'm 4th then, because I'd consider that to be illegal drugging.
That's true. That's true. We should maybe revisit those results in those Olympics.
Anyway, Skutcher and Dibic took the lead by going around the right side of the gate. Very close battle, by the way, between the two girls. Heading out to the right-hand side of the course. They're really close. They're match racing. I don't know if they're really match racing, but the battle is on between the two, and it's looking good for Plattner and Shelton.
4th placed boat in the centre of the screen, Higgins and Marsh, being chased by the South Africans, Larger and Hutton Squire.
And Sandy Higgins and Paul Marsh, front of picture, they use a different boat. They use an Australian-built boat, which they're very happy with. And it looks immaculate. It's about 7 years old, but you wouldn't know it to look at it.
And 3 Australian boats really in the mix and challenging each other in the fourth, fifth and seventh places. And it's always amusing to hear the banter in the boat park between the Aussie sailors. Nothing like a bit of one-upmanship before setting off to race each other around the course.
So let's look at the scores for the third place, and with Conrads and Haynes being in 10th position and Pinnell and Tallon in 8th, it actually means that they're both discarding this last race, and there's 2 points between them, so really Conrads and Haynes would need to climb up to third place in order to get to these 17 points.
Which is where they are right now. So as things stand, they're drawn on points in second place.
Let me update my overall leaderboard. Thanks for pointing that out to me. So overall, they are tied on points, and I think that's the battle we should focus on now. They're really tied on points. If Conrads and Haynes can gain 1 place, they climb up on the second place of the podium. So let's see what they're doing to get there. They're heading out to the right-hand side, following Hamlin and Nelson, Skutcher and Dibic, and that's where the battle is on. If they can get that 1 place.
And as things stand with the positions between Pinnell and Conrads, if things remain as they are, then really that is a battle not just for silver but for bronze as well, and everyone else is out of the running for a podium place. So here they are.
I was surprised by Conrads and Haynes' slow start. It seemed like they made a mess of the first beat, but they had good speed down the run, and they still seem to be maintaining that momentum from the last couple of days, because as this regatta has progressed, they've looked stronger and stronger.
But things are awfully close. Pinnell and Tallon heading out to the left-hand side of the course. Leads are changing all the time. I had them in second place a few seconds ago. So really, this split might be the split that is deciding this regatta.
But it's turning into a fascinating race. Plenty of overtaking, plenty of interesting tactics, plenty to talk about in this battle for second and third.
Tina Plattner seems to be very conscious about the battle for the women's trophy. She is staying very close to Nikki Bergner, covering her. I don't think that's a coincidence. In the middle of the fleet, she plays the game fair and square, but she is staying close to their opponents. And in the overall scores, there's plenty of room for her. She's got 85 points overall, 94 on Bergner and Stenger.
Okay, so that's the battle of the women. We caught up with them this morning. Let's hear what their take is on this race between them. What are Tina's strengths?
She's got David in the wire, and that means he's a little bit more on the weight, and that's a big plus in the windy conditions here. So we are very, very light, and that gives us a big disadvantage. And yeah, we try always to make the best out of it, but it's not working all the time.
She sailed for a lot longer than I have. She is a very, very good sailor, very good skipper, and I think she's got a very strong mind. So she goes out there and she'll fight and put the bite it on the race course and just go around and do her best. And I think the other things that they are really, really good in light wind. So.
Are we going to see a bit of a match race, a bit of cat and mouse fighting, especially at the start between the two of you?
No, we'll never do like this. We always want to have fun on the water, and we still have an eye on her, but we're not battling as really enemies.
But it would be nice to beat her.
Sure. Yeah, we'll always like to beat her, and yeah, she always likes to beat us, and in the end we'll see.
I do a lot better when I stay clear of other people. I think if you get too absorbed in racing with one other boat, you let too many other boats pass you by because you don't really watch out where they go. So no, I think we're both just going to go out and have fun on the race because we're all good mates. So let's not go out there and get into each other's faces, rather go out and have some fun.
Friendly rivalry between Tina Plattner there and Nicola Berkner. And that's what's going on between them on the course, Marcus.
Yeah, they're
And
not
I'm not
being
sure how friendly it is.
They're not being too hard on each other. They're staying close, but Stenger and Birkner have just tacked out, and Tina Plattner didn't tack right on top of them. She's staying close, but it's not surely not obsessive. She's playing the game really square here, and she's in a good position now to be ahead. Actually, Stenger and Birkner, they would have to gain more than 8 places in order to make it ahead in the overall standings. Meanwhile,
At the front of the fleet.
at the front of Pinal and Talon are quite safely in second place, which is good news for them in the overall scores. Conrads and Haynes are now closing in from the right-hand side. I think they will stay close to them, but I think Pinal and Talon do have the upper hand currently, with a good second place, and Conrads and Haynes currently in 5th place.
3 South African boats now in the top 10. Alexander Ham and Warwick Ham, his dad, are now in at number 9, and they've been challenging the top 10 throughout this regatta, but have never quite managed to make it into the top 5. And the Funke brothers, the best placed South Africans overall, are just bubbling outside the top 10 as well.
Conrad and Haynes closing in onto Pinel and Talon. How much is it between them? 52 meters. A lot can happen still, but Pinel and Talon would have to have a serious problem on the reaches now in order to give away that second place they currently hold. Looks like Higgins and March are going to make it into the gate, into the windward mark safely. What do you think, guys?
Now
Is he going to be ahead? Can he pass through?
Here we go. Now we can see from this live shot this cross as they come to the mark.
It looks good for the Aussies. It looks like they're going to be clear ahead as they're about to go into their final tack before going on to the reaching legs. And Marcus, I would think we've seen more place changing in this race than any other race of this series. It feels a lot more unpredictable and a lot shiftier than we've seen in previous races on the normally very steady Algoa Bay.
Yep, probably a more strategic race. What the sailors need to do is sort of ignore their opponents and stay close to the gusts, kind of look through them and just go onto the promising lanes where you jump from one gust to another. Higgins and Marsh are certainly doing that well right now.
Larger and Hutton Squire just coming up to the mark now.
And they're sailing really well, staying in the top 3 of this race. Be fantastic for them if they can hold on to a really good result in this race.
But all eyes on the second place boat, Ian Pennell, 2008 world champion. Can he hang on to that position? And if he can, it confirms him in second place overall, and the Americans Conrads and Haynes, and we'll get an update on their position in a moment. It'll leave them in 3rd place.
We can see how patchy the racetrack is now.
Coming up to the halfway mark of the race.
Higgins and March.
When Mike Holt has been sailing in some of the recent races, we've pretty much already got a distinct winner by this stage. But without him, the fleet is racing a lot closer. There are more challengers out there. And we've really got a situation where anyone could win this. And Pennell certainly hasn't secured his second place either yet. So plenty to sail for in the second half of this race. We're going to go out on the water very shortly and get a live report from the world champion, Mike Holt. He's talking to Andy right now.
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yes. We've got a very exciting race out here at the moment.
So what's your position and what kind of observations can you make out there?
Well, the first run was very critical. There were a lot of place changes going on down the first run, and how we managed to lose the lead. And Sandy came in from the right-hand side, and Christian and Terry from GBR came in from the left-hand side and split gates. And then up the next beat again, Sandy's managed to consolidate, and Sandy and Marshy have pulled away nicely, being chased now by Ian Pennell, which is pretty critical for second overall. Ted and Brian are back in fourth, and I think Quirky's in fifth. So the race is really on, but Pennell's got the upper hand at the moment.
Been a lot of place changing in this race. It seems more place changing in this race than maybe any other.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's been some big shifts, and we can see some big pressure variations across the race course as well. So it's definitely who's where and when and who's getting the puffs, and yeah, that was really, really important on the first run.
A bit of relief then that you managed to square away the World Championship without some of this more unpredictable stuff.
It would have been a very stressful race for us today, I think, yes.
All right, well, thanks very much, Mike. We'll come back to you a little bit later on in the race.
Sounds good. Thanks, Andy.
Sandy Higgins and Paul Marsh of Australia, still the leaders of this final race of the 2015 SAP World Championships. We're now halfway through race 8, with Ian Pennell, the 2008 champion, aiming to hold on to that second place and confirm his position as silver medalist in the World Championship. But what a great run from Larger and Hutton Squire in third place, the South Africans, who have come good in the end, and they're seeing off Conrads and Haynes, who at the moment are looking good for the third place on the podium in these World Championships. And that's the difference now between the leaders and second place Pennell, just 20 odd metres between them.
And more pace on Pennell and Talon. It's going to be a really interesting reach now. Can he do the halt? Can he overtake him?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Pennell and Talon, I think, have sailed really well this week. They're both experienced 505 sailors, but they're from different countries, different cultures, and they've managed to make it work extremely well between them.
We've seen very different conditions almost every day here in Port Elizabeth. This is a new set of conditions for us today. Quite low cloud, giving us a very grey sea, but we've had blue skies and sunshine and the most gorgeous blue seas in recent days.
And that's a tight reach, as we saw yesterday. You can see the mainsails ragging a little bit. They're not able to keep the mainsails fully powered up. They're trying to get rid of power there. But it looks to me like Higgins and Marsh from Australia on the left-hand side are doing a very good job. They're keeping Pennell and Talon at bay on this reach. But then will come the skill of when to drop the kite and how smoothly you can do that manoeuvre if you can't carry the kite all the way down to the bottom mark. And this is where weight and technique really come into play. This is the kind of reach that I like to see, because it really does throw another test at them, rather than just doing the windward leeward kind of racing that's so common today. It's seen to be a little bit old school, doing the triangle racing, but this is the good side of triangle racing.
Yeah, it's quite easy to understand drag racing, and it's cool to watch. I mean, we can just look at the numbers and see if they click down or up. At the moment, they just have exactly the same speed. Pennell and Talon struggling a little bit for height there. And they do have to press. That's the sort of reach you're after, right, Andy? You think that it should be challenging. They should be pressing for height. I don't think they're going to make it.
No, this is what you want to see. You want to see them challenged for making those marks, which you can just see top right in the graphic. And it looks like they're not going to be able to do it in one. They're probably going to have to drop their spinnakers slightly before the marks. And we saw Mike Holt pull a great passing move on Ted Conrads yesterday, because they did a smoother drop in this critical moment in the race. And so this is Pennell's moment to pounce if he can get this manoeuvre right. He's moved to within 25 metres of the lead, and he's also got a choice of marks to go around. You can either jibe around the right-hand mark, or the potentially simpler one is to go around the left-hand mark as we look at it here.
This is interesting. Do you think they're
Making
going to
his
make the
move
gate? Pennell is now... I wonder if they still have their kites up.
Well, according to the graphics they've dropped, and I think those graphics are incredibly accurate in terms of representing when the kites come
Just
down.
look
And now
how
we have it
close
in the
they are
image.
here on this live shot.
And it looks like Pennell might be able to roll over the top. The Australians really under pressure here, and it's going to be critical between these two as to who gets round the mark first. Of course, they can go round separate marks, but I think they probably both want to go round the far mark.
And they're luffing now beyond the mark. So we can see that they're passing, actually in the 3D graphics, we can see that Higgins and Marsh are luffing them beyond the mark because he wants to get rid of that overlap. Which side of the gate is going to be better? I think the left-hand side is favored, but I'm not sure.
It's a battle of nerves. Who can stay the calmest? Who believes in themselves the most?
Pennell has to remember not to get caught up in this battle. Okay, it would be nice to win the race, but surely higher on his priorities is making sure that he stays in second place overall ahead of Conrads and Haynes, who are just a point behind them at the moment.
Actually,
behind them, rather.
I believe the left-hand mark is actually an option. Looking at the wind, not sure, to be honest.
Doesn't look like they're taking it.
No, the right-hand gate mark is favored. We can see that from the top image.
So it may look left on your screen, but we're talking about this in terms of looking up the track. So that mark we're looking at now, we consider to be the right-hand mark, and that means they're both sailing out to the right-hand side of the course.
And Higgins and Marsh are rounding first, and off they go onto this second last upwind leg if we have a downwind finish.
And I was looking at the wake of that camera boat, but it was further away than it looked, because I didn't see any wash affecting either of those two boats as it sped past.
Tine Plantner, by the way, is still in 15th place, 14th place at the moment, and Birkner and Stenger in 16th place.
So the battle of the girls sees no dramatic changes in their positions.
Looking at that image there, it looks like Conrads and Haynes in the middle of the picture, just right of middle, have a lot of catching up to do if they're going to get Pennell, who's the boat that's just tacked away. So a bit of...
And it's not just about Conrads and Haynes catching Pennell and Tellin. It's a case of Pennell and Tellin getting things so wrong that they fall down the fleet, because at the moment Conrads and Haynes are 3 points behind the second placed Britain.
But this is the biggest day of snakes and ladders that we've seen so far. We've seen very stable conditions here in Port Elizabeth, but today is a lot more tactical. Very hard to hold your position in the fleet today with the variable breeze that we've got. And Marcus, what sense of the range of shift have you got today? How much is the breeze shifting?
It's actually not much at all. It's like 15 degrees. I'll double check that on the last upwind. We had, let me check, the wind started at 240, and the furthest it went to the left was 231 actually. So surprisingly stable breeze, at least where we take the measurements down at the in the starting area.
So it could be pressure variations, i.e. differences in wind speed rather than wind direction, that's determining the snakes and ladders.
Yep. And based on the wind field we had on the last upwind, I ran some simulations on which side was better, and the differences from side to side only amount to like 10 to 15 seconds. So it's really not... Well, at least you can't bang the corner. We always calculate the optimum course based on the wind field we had, and that's also only 20 seconds better than hitting one corner hard. In the simulation, that is, obviously.
And at this point, I'd just like to mention a boat that's currently in 28th place, Siggy Bales and Dudley Isaac of South Africa, because they're the only crew that are wearing black vests, black SAP bibs. The rest of the crew, as you can see here, are all wearing yellow, and they're doing that in memory of Glynis Bear, who died in an accident, a road accident, a few weeks ago. She was a stalwart of the Algoa Bay Yacht Club, the host yacht club of these wonderful World Championships here in Port Elizabeth, and is much missed by her colleagues here, and so they're wearing black in respect and in memory of her. But on the racecourse, it's still the Australians, Higgins and Marsh, in the lead. 30 metres between them and second place Ian Pennell. And the people chasing Pennell in the overall leaderboard are currently in third and putting on the pressure. But still 100 metres or so between them.
And we just saw Pennell going out of picture there. That's the leaders of this race, Sandy Higgins and Paul Marsh, just tacking, putting a loose cover on Pennell and Tellen. Higgins and Marsh will want to win this race for a bit of pride. They're well ahead in terms of, well, in fact, they have a possibility, thinking about it. Maybe, Marcus, they could even get into the top three if they have an amazing race. Well, what's the scenario for Higgins and Marsh? Because I've been thinking they can't realistically get a top three, but maybe they can.
Let me look at the overall scores. At the moment, they would be...
Mathematically, it's possible, because there's 3
check.
points between them as things stand, between Conrad's and Higgins, and Conrad's are sitting in third place.
And they need to drop 3 places.
So, yeah.
3 places would, if they drop from 3rd to 6th, then theoretically Higgins and Marsh could still make top 10. If they drop 7th places and Quirk and Payne are doing a little bit better, Quirk and Payne could even still be top 3.
So Sandy Higgins can only do one thing, and that is sail his race, keep an eye on Pennell, and do as well as he can, and he's doing just that right now in first place. And then he just has to hope that Conrads and Haynes get it wrong and fall down the fleet.
And by the way, looking at the mini-map bottom right, we can see that the course is skewed to the left again, and that makes the racetrack a little bit more simple and single-sided. You don't have that many options with the racetrack being a bit more narrow. And they're already heading, the leading pack is already heading to the ley line on the right-hand side, which will then make the top bunch become more of a speed race, more of a drag race out on that ley line.
Higgins and Marsh, sailor of Adelaide, and they don't have an awful lot of competition to race against in Adelaide, so when they come to these Worlds they have to check in with their boat speed, see how they're doing, and their feeling is that in these moderate conditions they're as fast as anybody, but they're not able to change gears through the range as well. So if it drops light or if it gets strong, they feel that they don't have the legs on the other teams, and they feel that's where the American and European teams are better in terms of being able to change gears across the wind range. But while the breeze holds to this moderate kind of wind speed, I think they feel very fast, and it looks like they do have the measure of Pennell and Tellen today. Very similar boat speeds.
Michael Quirk and Luke Payne sitting in 5th at the moment. I know Michael injured his back in the first of the 2 races yesterday, and he was pretty upset with their performance yesterday, and I know we gave them a bit of a hard time in commentary. We wondered why they weren't doing quite so well. He says it's no excuse, and that tactically he wasn't as good as he should have been, and they didn't sail as well as they should have done, but he virtually he hobbled out of the boat and up the slipway after racing yesterday, so I think it's more than just an excuse.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for him, and as you say, yeah, he wasn't making much of it, but you could just see from his limited body movement that he must have been really struggling and been in quite some pain yesterday. Don't know how he's doing out there today. Sometimes you can get some professional treatment and get those things resolved in a flash, but sometimes they stick with you.
Behind that graphic is a big white balloon. If you're tuning in for the first time and you're wondering what on earth that is, well, hanging from the bottom is our camera, and that's one of the cameras that has been bringing us some of the great aerial photography of this race. And a fairly constant distance-wise separation between Pennell and Higgins. It's always round about 30 metres, so both of them going very steadily. but it's growing. The gap between second and third is growing, and we've seen Pennell put 50 metres or so on the Americans.
So that's the more important battle for him, is keeping Conrads and Haynes behind him. But with that kind of gap, and with only a small gap to the Australians leading this race, maybe Pennell can start to think in terms of attacking the Australians again, just as he was doing down that reach just now. There's the SAP windward mark. This is the last time they'll go around this windward mark now.
And if you want to get in touch, you can do using hashtag SAP 5O5 Worlds on Twitter, or you can message us direct. I'm Alec Wilkinson, and Andy Rice is at Sailjuice. But hashtag SAP 5O5 Worlds. Also, if you've got any questions about the race, the details of the data that are coming off the boats, Marcus can delve into the analytics and maybe come up with an answer for you. But right now we're looking at Ian Pennell and his German crew, Johannes Tellen, making good progress up the course, staying in touch with the leaders from Australia. And no doubt keeping one eye behind them on the Americans, who are trying to catch them, but at the moment are failing in that task.
Nice tag right there. And that was
Johannes Tellen pointing and letting Ian know the best direction, and probably telling him where the mark is.
You can see how hard they're both working that boat. Ian Pennell using small body movements to get the boat over the wave.
That's Higgins and Marsh closing in onto that windward mark. Well camouflaged, that boat, for a day like today.
Yes, it is. But from that shot, you can see just how close 30 metres looks, and that looks less than 30 metres to me.
They've definitely closed in on that.
Yeah.
Good news for Ian Pennell.
Round
and
they
Johannes
go.
Tellen.
So going round the windward mark for the last time, and still a good battle between these two.
Yeah, it could be a very nice downwind battle. We'll see in a second.
And in a moment, you'll see them deploy the spinnaker. The big coloured sail at the front of the boat will fill with breeze, and out it puffs. That looked good.
Yeah, good set there by Sandy Higgins and Paul Marsh, and they get the boat up and running. Let's see how the red spinnaker on Pennell's boat goes, and that's not a bad set either. So maybe just about even Stevens between them there. Johannes Tellen just adjusting his trapeze height, just getting comfortable, getting into an effective position for getting the boat downwind, going for the best balance of VMG, going for a compromise between good speed and good direction towards the next mark.
Now, who will have the faster boat speed downwind? Will it be the leaders, or will it be Ian Pennell? And how will Conrads and Haynes do as they come round the mark?
Maybe jibe set.
We've
Will
seen
they
them
just
do it.
follow the leader?
Well, we've seen a lot of jibe setting by Conrads and Haynes this week. It's one of their favourite moves, and knowing what they've got to do, you'd think that's probably the best option for them.
And I think they have jibe set, if I see that correctly in the background. And there's some nice gusts back there as well.
So if the Americans have jibed, then this is their best opportunity to try and attack Pennell and Tellen. And there you see them coming into picture, the white spinnaker just at the top of the screen. And it looks like they're in a good gust there as well, whereas Pennell maybe looks a little bit soft for breeze. Pennell going for a jibe here. Higgins and Marsh carrying on, but maybe Pennell is thinking in terms of doing a loose cover. If the Americans are going to go out that side, I'm going to go out that side too, but it's a horrible jibe.
That was a horrible jibe, yeah. They
they've
almost
lost
wrapped around a forestay.
Yeah, that was terrible.
We need to pick on that.
When you say pick on that, you talk about this afternoon's debrief with the sailors? Is
No,
that
we
what you
won't
mean?
pick on it. They sailed tremendously well throughout this week. You can put one bad jibe in, that's okay. Unfortunate that our camera was on it. Nice jibe here by Higgins and Marsh, and off they go.
It looks like both of those boats are in the good gust that the Americans have further over to the left of our picture.
Conrads and Haynes don't seem to make headway on the right-hand side of the course so far.
And now the leaders meeting the stragglers of the fleet going the other way. That can be confusing for newcomers to sailing.
That's true. But you've always got to keep an eye out for traffic as you're going down these courses.
It's all part of the game, all part of the race. And first and second seem to be matching each other for speed. And the South African boat, Larger and Hutton Squire, doing so well, still in the mix, still in the top 5, still flying the flag for South Africa, and still the best South African placed boat at the moment, albeit not in the overall leaderboard. So we have the leaders closest to us, Higgins and Marsh, with Pennell and Tellent, the red spinnaker in the distance.
Hi, Mike. Yes, I can hear you.
And let's
We're
go
not
back
on air yet,
on
just
to the
hold
water.
for a moment. I'll ask you in a moment.
And let's speak to Mike Holt, the champion, and get his take on how things are looking out there. He's talking to Andy.
Mike Holt, you've won your World Championship. You're watching how things are unfolding for the other places in the podium. What do you see? Mike?
I think we might have lost Mike, so we're watching the boat without the spinnaker, Andrew Arthur and John Anderson, who are, I think, penultimate overall in the leaderboard, but they've had, in fact, they're bottom. They've had a really difficult championship. It got to the stage where they were telling me in the boat park that actually their aim was to start a race. Well, they've managed to start, I think, 2 races. This will be the 3rd race they've managed to start, and they're flapping around at the back of the fleet. Meanwhile, let's see what's happening at the front of the fleet. Here's Mike again.
Hi, Mike. You're on air. What do you see out there on the water?
Well, the runs here are very, very tricky, and right now it keeps swinging backwards and forwards. For a while, Ian Pennell was looking very good in second and moving up on Sandy and Paul, but right now he's run out of a bit of pressure and Sandy's pulling away. But the interesting bit is behind is with Brian and Ted are in 3rd, but there's some pretty big splits going on. So how it all comes back at the lure mark will be really interesting to see. But right now it's the status quo, and we'll see what comes out when they come into the mark here. But Brian and Ted have definitely closed down a little bit on Ian.
All right, thanks very much for that, Mike. Appreciate your input.
Speak to you soon.
Looking at the data, the shifts have become bigger, actually, as they went around that. On the last lap, the swings have become a little bit bigger in the wind.
Yeah.
We're now looking at
What's
shifts
happening to the Australians there? Sandy Higgins, Paul Marsh having a bit of trouble.
Yeah, that was a terrible jibe on their part. We saw a less than satisfactory jibe by Pennell just now, and it looked like a bit of a fluff jibe there by the Australians.
And they've got a speed problem right now.
And it's given Pennell the chance to close the gap.
And
Maybe they
we've seen
just had
these
to
two
go very
before at
low.
leeward marks, haven't we? It's always these two, and in the past, Pennell has driven Sandy Higgins out to the other mark that he didn't necessarily want to take. We'll have to ask them afterwards which mark they prefer, but it looks like they're going to do split exits out of this final gate mark, and it's one last beat to the finish, and they're going to be going opposite ways with very little to choose between them at the moment.
So the Australians go left.
Yes, the Australians going left.
The Brits
Pennell,
have gone right.
and a split developing, and is this Pennell's opportunity to take the lead from Higgins and Marsh? Has he
Third
once
place.
again stolen a march?
Third place,
very
Conrads
much-
and Haynes
I
dropping
very
their
much
spinnaker, going round the mark now.
Think so, and it is an upwind finish after all. We had the wrong course initially, so we are finishing upwind.
That's good to know. So upwind with Penel and Tellen have now taken the lead and are looking faster than the Australians as well. And they will
Conrads
be
and Haynes.
increasing that lead as we watch them go upwind.
Conrads and Haynes going around the leeward gate now, and actually not far away from Higgins and Marsh, but Penel and Tellen in a safe first position now with a 66-meter lead on Higgins and Marsh.
Proving to be a very good final race for Penel and Tellen. They've kept their cool in quite challenging conditions. Mike Holt said earlier he was glad that he wasn't having to determine the outcome of this world title on a day like today. He managed to square it away yesterday with 2 race wins on the day. And anyway, Penel and Tellen, they opened the gate. They were forced to be the pathfinders, forced to be given the hand that they were up the first beat of this race. They haven't had it all their own way, but we've seen others come and go. Howie Hamlin, Jeff Nelson were the early leaders of this race, but they've not managed to hang in there. Penel and Tellen coming on strong and looking increasingly like they could be the winners of this race as well as the runners-up in the world title.
And we should say Conrads and Haynes have improved steadily throughout the championship. Didn't see much of them in the earlier races, but they've certainly come true with 3 second-place finishes, and they're currently sitting 3rd. So they complained that they didn't get much training time together. Well, they've done their training in competition this week, and we've seen them steadily improve and really challenge the leaders.
Interesting shot right here with Penel and Tellen in the foreground and Higgins and Marsh in the background. They look a little bit lonely out there in the water. You wonder where the rest of the fleet really is, but that's how far the fleet actually spreads out. And these are the leaders. We see one boat going downwind.
Now, considering Penel finished the last leg 30 metres behind Higgins and Marsh, they came out of that turn as leaders. They've now got a march of 70 metres.
So once again, Penel wins the battle of the leeward gates against Sandy Higgins and Paul Marsh. They've gone round those leeward gates a number of times this week, and it seems to be mostly that Penel gains the upper hand on these close battles at those leeward gates.
Now all he has to do is steer it home. Keep it safe. Keep it right and true. And his first place finish in this race will confirm him as 2nd on the podium in the World Championships.
Liam Penel, he's won so many championships, national, European and world titles in so many dinghy classes. I don't think he gets nervous in situations like these. He's been there so many times before, and in the course of his career has probably got the better of Mike Holt more often than Mike Holt has got the better of him. They're not that different in age, but Penel has been one of the leading lights for the last 20 or 30 years that he's been racing, whereas Mike Holt, he seems to be coming into the best form of his life in his late 40s.
And we should also say that Ian Penel, if he finishes 2nd and things remain as they are, then 1st, 2nd and 3rd in the championship have all been sailing and racing with his sails.
Yes, so for him this is a manufacturer's championship as well as a driver's championship, and that will be very pleasing for him. Of course, he would love to have been lifting the world title trophy. Not that he'd be able to, because that's been stuck in a container in California along with the boats that didn't make it from California. But yeah, Ian Penel would dearly love another 505 world title. He won his only one so far in his career in 2008, and he probably feels that he's due another one for all the time and effort he's put into the class and for the talent that he has.
And for those of you wondering about the battle of the ladies, well, it's no change really. Plattner got out in front and has stayed pretty much in front, but Nicola Berkner shadowing her for much of the race, and they're currently sitting in 14th and 15th place respectively.
There's a very close battle at the back end of the top 10 as well. Very few points between those boats. Looks like the Funke brothers from South Africa might get their wish of getting a top 10 finish if things stayed the way that they were, but there's only a matter of a point or so in it, and they've got people like Howie Hamlin and Jeff Nelson, the former world champions, breathing down their necks just outside the top 10. And so a lot could change there, but it would be nice to see South Africa get at least one boat in the top 10 of this championship.
Very much so, but it's changing by the second, really. At the moment, they're 10th again. They were just out. Now they're 9th again. It's changing all the time. It's going to be an interesting upwind in regards to that.
In the battle amongst the Australians, Quirk and Payne, despite being in 4th, are good enough to hold on to their 4th place overall. Higgins and Marsh in 2nd place will finish in 5th. But that may yet change. There's still some way to go in this final leg. And if you're looking at the mini-map in the bottom right-hand corner,
half wind up the beat we are. Of course, a little bit skewed to the left, not as much as it was. Finish line on top. Finish line is slightly favored to the left. And Ian Pennell nicely placed in the middle, simply covering his opponents, not getting phased at all there. No way to pass for Higgins Marsh, especially not with the current speed of Ian Pennell. He's got a slightly faster boat, as it seems.
how wrong did Higgins and Marsh get this final leg?
I think the damage was done at the leeward gates, and the damage there was caused by that fluffed jibe. They did that horrible jibe where they failed to get the kite set and the pole set on the new jibe as quickly as they would like to have done, and that allowed Pennell and Tellen to attack them and to be able to have the choice of going round the right-hand mark and going out to the right-hand side. The Australians were driven out to the left, and when they came back together again, when that split was resolved, it was resolved in the British sailors' favour. So,
and who will take the fault for that that bad jibe, Higgins or Marsh?
I think it's a bit of both, really. It's a team manoeuvre. It requires good coordination from both of them.
Beautiful German flag in the background, by the way. Got to highlight that.
Yes.
It's
it's
packing
good to
up
see
now.
they're putting it away now. Yeah. If I have to put my Union Jack laptop away, I don't see why they should be able to carry that sail on the racetrack. Attack there by Higgins and Marsh. How are they doing? Are they anywhere close to Pennell and Tellen? Hard to say from that camera angle, but it looks like Pennell and Tellen are going to win this race as things stand, and they've only really got to cover the Australians. The Americans just aren't close enough really to be that dangerous, but you see the way that Pennell has tacked there. Not only is he tacking back towards the Australians, he's tacked squarely on top of the Americans, some 100 metres behind, so very solid tactical sailing there by Pennell and Tellen, covering both boats quite effectively by tacking where they did just then. And it's been great weather pretty much all the way through this regatta. Really, really good sailing conditions. We only lost that one day when it was just too windy. It was blowing 45, maybe even more knots across Algoa Bay, so that was not doable on that day. But every other day has been a really, really good day's sailing, and I think the 5O fleet would love to come back here sometime, and I think for those that have come here, they would only evangelise and enthuse about coming back here, and hopefully we get a bigger turnout if it ever came back to Port Elizabeth.
But 2016 will see the World Championships move to England, and the Weymouth venue for the London 2012 Olympics, which should be a tremendous venue for the World Championships. For those of you wondering and watching yesterday and you saw that crash on the start line involving the South African boat, which is one of the oldest boats in the fleet, 45 years old, with its skipper Grant Ballantyne, and you're wondering if we'll see them again. He said, yeah, sure, I'm going to come to Weymouth, and I will definitely be continuing. I'll just have to fix my mast, that's all. So Pennell and Tellen still well in control of this race as we watch the Australians in second place, who've closed that gap a little bit, haven't they?
Yeah, Higgins and Marsh are closing in 13 meters, 14 meters. But it looks like it's going to be enough for Pinnell and Tellen to finish ahead of them. And in the overall scores, it wouldn't make a big difference. Anyway.
You say it would or wouldn't make a big difference?
It wouldn't.
Wouldn't, okay.
Well, having said that, 1 point extra might put Higgins and Marsh in 4th place instead of 5th.
Pinnell and Tellen secure enough not to feel they don't have to do a hard cover on the Australians.
As things stand, if the South Africans move up a place into 4th, then that will also propel Higgins and Marsh into 4th place and give them the victory over their fellow Australians.
Is that so?
1 point between Quirk and Higgins at the moment in the overall leaderboard, with Quirk in 4th, Higgins in 5th. But here we are with the leaders. Ian Pinnell, world champion in 2008. He's not going to be world champion this year. That honour went yesterday to Mike Holt for the 2nd time in 2 years. As we see the finish line come into view. And Ian Pinnell seals this final race of the 2015 SAP World Championships, and it's enough to give him 2nd place overall, silver medal in the World Championships, with the Australians Higgins and Marsh coming in 2nd, and we'll see what that does to their position in the leaderboard.
5th overall currently,
and a long way back to 3rd place for Conrads and Haynes, over 100 metres before they finish. So in the end, the top 2 that have led for a couple of legs now have managed to really control the final stretches of this race.
That's Conrads and Haynes in the image right now, closing in onto the finish line.
And what a championship it's been for them. They came with very little time training together, but they've done whatever they had to do on the water in competition, and it's been good enough to give them 3rd in this race and 3rd overall in the World Championships.
Very good effort by them. But Pinnell and Tellen crossing the line just now, you could see how much it meant to them, high-fiving, slapping each other on the back. Very, very pleased to have got that 2nd place overall by winning that final race.
And Michael Quirk and Luke Payne finish in 4th place, which they'll be pleased with, given the injury to Michael Quirk's back yesterday. And I'm looking at the leaderboard, and I think that secures them 4th overall, which means in the battle of the Australian fleet, Quirk and Payne come out on top. Only just, though, from Higgins and Marsh, who finish in 5th.
And Luke Payne crewing for Michael Quirk. He was 2nd last year in the World Championships. That was a bit of a surprise. I think he's getting back for Weymouth 2016 with his helm of last year, Pete Nicholas, and they are planning on mounting a proper campaign for Weymouth 2016. They want to win this World Championship at some point, and 2016 for them is when they want to do it.
And there are our winners today. Ian Pinnell and his German crew, Johannes Tellen, just hiking out there at the front of the boat. And they're staying focused on actually sailing the boat, which is something that Conrads and Haynes didn't do yesterday. They were so busy celebrating and trying to shout across to Mike Holt to congratulate him on his overall win that they managed to capsize right in front of the cameras, which gave us a chuckle and gave them a red face. Now we'll try and get out on the water and get our connections to the camera boat and Mike Holt, who's watching this finish, and then we'll try and bring that to you live on this commentary.
And let's look at the girls finishing.
Hi Mike, yes, can hear you.
So who have we got there? Because you've got the graphics.
We're just getting it on screen.
Okay, well whilst we're waiting for the girls' result, let's speak to Mike Holt, Andy.
Hi Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Andy, yes.
So, Ian Purnell, he wins the final race. He comes second overall in the World Championship. What were your observations from that race?
Oh, it was great fun to actually watch a race rather than be stressed and taking part in it. And I think Ian and Johannes sailed a very good race there. They made some good gains on the final run and picked the left-hand mark and managed to control it from then on in. But it was a battle there between Ian and Johannes, Sandy and Paul. They fought the race out front, and behind them Brian and Ted were making sure they stayed in front of Quirky and Luke to make sure they held on to third. So it was good fun to watch and great sailing in perfect conditions.
And there was a couple of fluff jibes down that last run. I don't know if you could see them from your position, but do you think there was some nerves creeping into the Australian and British boats?
Yeah, I think they were definitely not full throttle on the last couple of manoeuvres there for sure. And I think Sandy and Marshy will be kicking themselves when they get in that they didn't do a better job of holding off Ian.
And you've had almost 24 hours for it to sink in that you've won your second world title and Carl has won his first. Any further thoughts on that?
Oh no, it's been a really fantastic time down here. We've had a really enjoyable time. It's been a very hospitable yacht club and all the organisation, the effort they put into it. The racing's been great and it's just been an absolute blast to come here and compete and have fun.
And if there was another World Championship of the 505s in South Africa, would you be back?
Oh, without a doubt, yes. The people who didn't come down made a huge mistake. It has been absolutely fantastic down here.
All right, well, Mike, congratulations once again, a worthy winner, and thanks for helping us out today out there on the water.
Thanks, Andy. It's been fun giving us the opportunity to come out here.
Mike Holt, a fine champion, always interesting things to say and always time to say them for us.
And what we just saw a second before was the finish of Nikki Bergner and Stenger and Tina Plattner and Shelton.
So basically the battle for the women's trophy.
And actually Nikki Bergner managed to squeeze past by a boat length just before the finish, and it doesn't change the overall scores though. Overall, Tina Plattner will still be the first women's skipper in this World Championship.
So the trophy will go to her, and it's a fine trophy as well of a seated cheetah, I believe it is. All the trophies represent an animal, a South African animal. So they've got cheetahs and meerkats, and yeah, they look really good. No monkeys.
And that's been one of the fun things about coming here as well, is being able to go on what they call a game drive, what we might call a safari, see some of the wild animals, and you feel very connected with nature in South Africa.
What's your favorite animal then?
Well, I do like the monkey, but I'm also a big fan of the elephant.
I love the wart pig. Wart pig's #1 for me.
It's got a face only a mother could love. I guess that's something you're familiar with, Marcus.
There are a few animals that look a bit ugly as well out there, aren't there? But no, the elephant for me. And let's talk sailing, shall we? Instead of banging on about safari. So Holt and Smith sealed the championship yesterday, but what a race for Ian Purnell today. He came in first and sealed second place. And what do you think he'll take away from this year's championship?
Ian Purnell, I think he'll be very happy that his sails finished first, second and third. He's a businessman as well as a sailor. He is now, I think, in his 50s, but is showing no sign of slowing down. He's still a really, really top talent. And I think he and Johannes, as I've said before, can be very pleased with how they've gelled as a unit, how they've worked together as a team, and who Ian Purnell plans to sail with next year at the Worlds in Weymouth, I'm not sure, but clearly they have the ability to win a World Championship if they were to put the time in together.
Okay, let's just break down this race and see what the analytics and the data tell us, Marcus.
Yep, let's see what the data says. Let's first we look at the top 5. A nice race by Elijah and Hutton, by the way, in 5th place. And who sticks out again, speed-wise? Conrads and Haynes, the overall fastest team this week. We looked at their data yesterday. Throughout the whole week, they really stick out speed-wise, and they really stick out distance-wise, because they always cover the most distance, going just low and fast. Decent speed on Ian Pennell and Johannes Talon. Second fastest boat in this race. But let's look at the distance that tells the whole story, and there we have it. Again, a very nice and healthy combination of speed and distance on Ian Pennell. That's what won them the race. Slight speed deficits on Higgins and Marsh here, but also very good on the distance. But Conrads and Haynes, they've got the biggest bars always on speed and distance, and that is not such a healthy combination. Speed alone is not good enough. They also need to go high to the wind. Maneuvers, no clear pattern. A lot of maneuvers on Conrads and Haynes. Maybe that cost them a little as well. Apart from that, Pennell and Talon didn't tack around much, didn't jibe around much, kept it simple, and that's what won them this last final race.
And one of the other stats that fascinates me is the total distance travelled to have actually competed in this SAP 505 World Championship. Marcus, are you able to call up the total distance in kilometres travelled?
Yep, let me just get that out. Will only take me 30 seconds. I get the total distance here. You just need to go to sapsailing.com and go to the overall leaderboard, and then select the total distance sailed. And actually on the boat that has covered the most distance is USA 9091. That is,
no surprise there, it's Conrads and Haynes.
And it's 154.5 kilometers.
So they've managed to travel further than anyone else, but still finish in 3rd place.
By far further, but they went a lot faster too. I think this is a really interesting stat, something that we wouldn't have seen in the old days without all this data analytics. And it's a bit of a trivia maybe, but knowing that these boats have to cover 150 kilometers to finish a world championship is also quite interesting.
And it does, I mean, we tease you about sitting in Geek Corner and giving us all these stats and facts.
I love my Geek Corner.
We love your Geek Corner as well, and you do come up with some fascinating things that really bring the stories behind the racing alive. You know, it's no longer a case of just looking at a few white triangles out in the distance. We can really see what is happening on those white triangles, and it makes a lot of sense. And it's great for sailors as well, because they can access, and not just these competitors here who can access all the data in the sailors lounge after sailing, but for the sailing public in general, because you go to the website and it's all there, and you can see what people are doing right, what people are doing wrong, and maybe steal some ideas.
I think there are lessons to be learned, but looking at the future, and SAP obviously is always looking towards what the next big thing is. I don't know how far away it is, but I would love to see the thought patterns of the sailors during the races. That's what I want to see.
I'm not sure that's a good idea.
Well, what we're doing now...
Suddenly we realise that the last thing on their minds is sailing.
What we're doing now is that we're simulating the courses, and that we actually can tell which side was better than the other. And the more wind sensors we're going to get out on the race course, the better it's going to be with our simulations. So we're only beginning to start a process where actually us in the studio know more than the sailors out there. So we're in a sort of superior position, and you got to make sure that that information doesn't flow in that direction. Okay,
well, the most important data, of course, to come through is the leaderboard. So just before we go, let's finally confirm the leaderboard, the final leaderboard for these 2015 SAP World Championships. Mike Holt then, champion as of yesterday for the 2nd year running. Ian Pennell and Johannes Talon secured 2nd place with 13 points. In the end, it was a 14-point margin from the Americans. Amongst the Australians, Quirk and Payne took the honours, taking 4th place, but look at that, just 1 point between them and and Higgins and Marsh, who did so well in this final race of the championships. We had 2 discards because the rules say that 8 races means 2 discards, and that is the result of that decision. And Bowman Roos in 6th place, but the best placed South African boat, as predicted a week ago, before we went into these championships, the Funke brothers, Peter and Thomas, who are also instrumental in bringing these World Championships to Algoa Bay Yacht Club here in Port Elizabeth. They finished off in 8th place, and they aimed for a top 10 finish. They've achieved that, and I think they'll be happy both with that and with how the championships have gone in general. So congratulations to them. So those are the top 10 in the leaderboard. Let's just finish off by bringing Marcus in. Marcus, your overall thoughts on how the racing has gone, and what will be the sort of enduring memory you take away on the competition?
Well, I think it was a really challenging regatta. I think the conditions were a great mix. We had 3 days of onshore breeze with waves, very demanding sailing, on the limit really, and we had now 2 days with offshore breeze, very shifty. Unfortunately, we lost 1 day due to too much wind, but it's been a great mix, which gives us a very well-deserved world champion and also a very well-deserved podium in general. And I think Port Elizabeth is a place where you can come back for sailing and do more sailing. It's a great place to race and to do lots of other things as well.
And Andy, where do you stand on this? What are your memories, and what do you think was the best part of the racing?
I think the waves. I just think the waves were sensational. You can't really find that racing anywhere in Europe, and also the dominance of Mike Holt and Carl Smith.
I'm still live, by the way.
Competing in 7 races and winning 5 of them.
And you had to say that because the two of them walked into the studio just as you were talking. So I see you've got the mic, so you start first of all. We're just looking back at the week really and discussing the memories that we will take away from these championships. Other than the fact that you've won it, what will you take? What's the enduring memory you'll take with you?
I think the hospitality of the club, the people, everybody around here has been just amazing, and the reception we've had here and the fun times. It's been a wonderful place to come. The water's warm, big waves, good breeze. I think couldn't really have asked for more. If you put a recipe together for the perfect championship, it just about delivered.
And we found a new talent for you as a race commentator as well. So,
yeah.
Well done on that. No, very good.
Thanks.
Very
I'm not sure how that really went.
Good insight.
Yeah.
If you pass the microphone over, your memories and what will endure for you of this championship, Carl?
Yeah, I think there's some fun days out on the water. It's been great breeze and a lot of fun. We certainly had some challenges in that second day. But I think that the band during the lay day was fabulous. That whole experience out on the beach that the club put on for us was really fun. And I think I'd never been to South Africa before, so I think it was really fun coming and seeing Port Elizabeth in the area. So.
Okay. Well, what a great way to finish a week of broadcasts from Port Elizabeth with the world champions of the 60th edition of the 505 World Championships in the studio with us. Well done, guys. Congratulations. Thanks for all your help today out on the commentary boat. Thanks to Andy Rice and Marcus Bauer, who've been in the studio with us all week. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.